truly setting the tone for the celebrations that lie ahead.
Yes, absolutely. Ladies and gentlemen, fasten your seatbelts and get your excitement hats on. After all, it's not every day you attend a Diamond Jubilee celebration, right?
Absolutely. I'm Astha Verma.
And I am Naman Jain. And together, we are going to be your host for this grand occasion, the Diamond Jubilee celebration of JBIMS.
60 years of excellence. That's older than Google, Instagram, and even Naman's favorite retro playlist.
Guilty. But Bajaj has always been ahead of the curve. Building leaders before entrepreneur was on everyone's Twitter bio.
From boardrooms to brainstorming sessions, JBIMS has shaped minds that are sharper than our alumni's LinkedIn profiles.
Today, we are kicking off our plenary session, wherein leaders from the Bajaj family will reflect on the past, discuss the present, and shape the future.
It's not just a panel, it's a powerhouse of ideas. So buckle up. Not like it's a finance lecture, but it will make you think.
And don't worry, we promise it won't be 60 talks for all of the 60 years, or maybe we might have 60 talks.
Our plenary session is themed Vision 2040, Preparing Leaders for the Future.
That's right. We are about to hear from visionaries who have not only witnessed change, but have also led them. So let's get started with our plenary session.
Our first speaker needs no long introduction. He is a leader, mentor, and someone who has shaped India's governance framework with integrity. A former secretary to the Government of India and an IAS officer par excellence. Please join us in welcoming Mr. Anil Swarup to the stage. I would now like Professor C.R. Chavan to join us on the stage to felicitate him with a token of our gratitude.
ओके मुख्तसर सी जिंदगी के अजब से अफसाने हैं, यहाँ तीर भी चलाने हैं, परिंदे भी बचाने हैं. Friends, life is tough, and when we talk of creating leaders for the future, we have to take into account the tough life around us. Now, many of us want to become good leaders. Almost everyone would want to become a good leader. But the question is, how do you become a good leader? I am not here to give you any theoretical lecture on what leadership is all about, but I will talk about my personal experience in terms of understanding life, in terms of understanding set of circumstances, and then making the best out of those set of circumstances. When I took over as Coal Secretary, Government of India, things were pretty bad. So I rang up a friend of mine and asked him, this is 2014, mind you, all scams had happened. So I asked a friend of mine, yaar ye batao sector kaisa hai? He said, gangs of Wasipur dekhi hai kya? So that settled the issue. You know, that's the context in which I was asked to do coal. By God's grace and on account of an absolutely amazing team that I had, we turned around the coal sector from acute scarcity. I remember having come to Mumbai at the request of the then Chief Minister, who's also presently the Chief Minister. He rang me up and said at 12 o'clock during the day, Anil ji, kya aap Bombay aa sakte hain? मैंने कहा सर बताइए कब आना है? बोले आज आ जाइए. 12 o'clock during the day. मैंने कहा साहब तो 12 तो बज रहा है. बोले नहीं आ जाइए शाम को, बड़ी क्राइसिस है. हमारे कोल प्लांट्स में सिर्फ 1 या 2 दिन का कोयला बचा है. आई एम टॉकिंग ऑफ 2014 माइंड यू. So I take a flight at 4 o'clock, and here at around 6:15, drive down to a hotel. The Chief Minister comes over to the hotel. We engage in a discussion till 12 o'clock in the night. Next morning, I take an early morning flight, 6 o'clock, back to Delhi for a meeting with the Prime Minister. This was the crisis. From that crisis, on account of an absolutely amazing team that I had, we turned it around, and we came to a situation where we are toying with the idea of exporting coal to Bangladesh. Now, it's a long story. I'm not coming to that. You know, since Prime Minister Modi used to mention very correctly that we should have a smaller government, less government and great governance. So I used to go to PMO and say, everything has been sorted out in coal. I have made myself totally redundant, and I was very fond of it, making myself redundant. From sleeping in the office to sort out issues, I had only 45 minutes of work in the office. So I used to tell the PMO, you should wind up the coal ministry, because if you continue with the coal ministry, I'll create some problem to justify my existence there. They didn't listen to me. When I went over to them for the second time, at that time they were scouting for the most illiterate, uneducated civil servant because they wanted him to become the school education secretary. They found that in Mr. Anil Swarup, so I became school education secretary. I thought I was getting out of the dark dungeons of coal mines to the bright lights of school education, and to my utmost horror, I found that the mafias of school education were much worse than the mafias of coal. In coal, or the mining was underground, the mafias were overground. In education, all the mafias are underground, eating into the essentials of Indian society. It was as bad as that. Now, I don't want to go into the details of what those mafias were. If you are interested, you can read my books. But the point that I'm trying to make here is that circumstances are tough, whether as a bureaucrat or even in the private sector. You know, imagine, last night, I tried to sleep because I was competing with the mosquitoes. They won't let me sleep. So what do? I could have felt frustrated. I didn't. I thought this was an opportunity. So I am working on my 5th book, and that was an opportunity because mosquitoes gave me that opportunity to write another chapter of my next book. So the point that I'm trying to make here is, you can't do much to mosquitoes, especially in a hotel as good or as bad as in which I was staying. But you can do a lot to yourself, and that's what I'm trying to hammer in today in my talk to you. You know, fortunately live in a democracy. We're very fortunate. In a democracy, almost everyone has an idea. You walk down the road and they will tell you, ये करना चाहिए. हमारी तरफ यूपी में उनको राय साहब कहते हैं. वो खुद कर नहीं सकते कुछ, वे राय देते हैं. Advice. एक इस जेब से निकाल के दे देंगे, इस जेब से दे देंगे. खूब राय देते हैं. And there are international advisors, who come from across the Atlantic. When it's too cold there and the weather here is good, they give their advice and they go back. They're international advisors. तो advice की कमी नहीं है, क्योंकि उनको करना तो कुछ है नहीं, advice दे दो. But for an idea to fructify and sustain, and listen to this very carefully, in a country like ours, it has to be politically acceptable, socially desirable, technologically feasible, financially viable, administratively doable, judicially tenable, emotionally relatable, and environmentally sustainable. So it's not easy to do things, and add to these 8 dimensions are mosquitoes of the night. So you always have that. There will always be distraction around you, and mind you, there's so many youngsters sitting here. Let me tell you, when I joined the IAS, I thought I'll do this, I'll do that, I'll change him, I'll do that. And soon I realized I couldn't do a nut to anybody. But I also discovered I can do a lot to myself. And that's where the journey began. The moment you realize that you have no control over a set of circumstances, and the moment you realize the only control you have over your karma, the journey towards becoming a leader begins. You cannot begin by saying, I'll do this to him, this to them. And mind you, all of you sitting here are Hanumans. You don't know the power that you have in you. You have to look inwards and see, evolve as an individual to be reckoned with. खुदी कुकर बुलंद इतना कि हर तकदीर से पहले खुदा बंदे से कुछ पूछे बता तेरी रजा क्या है. You have to evolve as an individual to be reckoned with. But the key question is how? How do I evolve as an individual to be reckoned with? So I am talking to the youngsters sitting here. बाकी हम जैसे लोग तो we become hard-boiled eggs. हमारा कुछ नहीं बन सकता, ऑमलेट कुछ नहीं बन गए जो बनता था. But the youngsters sitting here reflect over what I'm trying to say, and this is born out of a bit of experience that I've had in life. 38 years as a civil servant, and perhaps even better experience post-retirement, 7 years that I have been here. So listen to this carefully. You have to start with yourself. You know, the easiest thing on earth to say is to blame somebody else for your ills. They may be responsible. The university is bad, the faculty is bad, this is bad, that is bad. Easiest thing to do to blame others. उम्र भर यही भूल करता रहा गालिब, धूल चेहरे पे थी, आईना मलते रहे आईने को, कुछ होना नहीं है. तो आपको तो अपना चेहरा सुधारना है. उसके लिए a few things for you. The first is, We spend so much time on brooding over the past. होता है नहीं होता है? ऐसा क्यों हुआ, वो क्यों? आजकल तो नेशनल पास टाइम है, सब कब्रें खोदी जा रही हैं। जितनी जैसे उस कब्र खोदने से हमारा फ्यूचर बन जाएगा। यहाँ चाइना लगा हुआ थोरियम का न्यूक्लियर प्लांट बना दिया, हमारे पास इतना थोरियम है केरला में, वो हम नहीं इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं, हम कब्र खोद रहे हैं, हम थोरियम के लिए गड्ढा नहीं खोद रहे। So the choice is ours. Now friends, so many of you are sitting here, can anybody change his past? Anybody? It's done and dusted. To my mind, the only relevance, and that's a great relevance that past has for us, is the lessons from the past, both good and bad. The mistakes that we may have committed in the past, that should be a lesson for us. The success stories, how can I learn from my success stories and somebody else's success stories? So the only relevance that the past, to my mind, is in terms of lessons. It's not that you should forget your past. What I'm saying is, don't obsess with your past. You have limited time available with you, 24 hours a day. You have to decide how do you want to spend your time, whether brooding over the past, whether obsessing with the past, or living in the present. The other aspect is future. उसका तो यार पता ही नहीं किसी को क्या होना है. You know, only the palmist and horoscope, I call them horoscope, will tell you. And it is not only with you, with me also. Again, same, when I became Coal Secretary, Government of India, तो मैंने सोचा अपने मित्र के पास जाऊं. He is a national palmist, गंजा है, मोटा है, टीवी पे आता है, खूब तालियां बजती हैं. तो मैं गया उसके पास, मैं उसको खूब टांग फेंचता हूं. I don't believe in it, but I went to him. I showed him my palm. बॉस, कोल सेक्रेटरी बन गए, क्या होगा आगे? उन्होंने बड़ा ध्यान से मेरा हाथ देखा. बोले बॉस आपके अगले 3 महीने बड़े गड़बड़ हैं, बहुत बहुत परेशानी होगी. मैंने कहा उसके बाद आदत पड़ जाएगी. सो द की हियर इज, उसको भी नहीं पता फ्यूचर क्या है और आपको भी नहीं पता, ये सब बेकार की बातें हैं. द ओनली थिंग बाय यंग फ्रेंड्स इज द प्रेजेंट नाउ. दैट इज इन माई कंट्रोल. Am I making the best use of the present? That's what, to my mind, should be the prime objective. Am I enjoying the moments that we are in? I was telling a few youngsters before I came here, I was sitting with them over a cup of tea, and I told them, if you can enjoy the present moment, half the job is done. You know, many of you are here. I don't know why you are here. There must be some reason. Because without reason, you don't come here. Either the tea here was very good, or perhaps you thought it's very hot outside and you're sitting here, or you thought, I've heard about Mr. Anil Swarup. When he speaks, it's like a lullaby. You can go and sleep there. So there could be any reason why you're sitting here. Now the issue here is, are you enjoying those moments? Life becomes that much easier. You know, we are in a country where we say, Karmanyevadikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana, but we don't believe in it. We are so obsessed with results that we don't do our karma well. Somehow, anyhow, get that result. It doesn't work, my friend. Because, as I discovered in my life, absolutely no control over results. I mean, I am now convinced I have no control. So hence enjoy moments. And I learned it the hard way. You are seeing a finished product, Anil Swarup. I wasn't that way. I have myself committed so many mistakes, felt frustrated. It's not that I am what I am today. I have always been that way. When I was posted as sub-divisional magistrate in a district called Hardoi, you would not know, it's very close to Lucknow in UP. Everything was fine, but suddenly Mrs. Indira Gandhi was assassinated in 1984. Many of you would not have been born. And all hell broke loose. Members, very powerful members of the ruling party, were destroying the shops of minority community. My job as sub-divisional magistrate was to somehow keep everything in order. And as I was doing that, I got this intelligence that that's an MLA, a very powerful MLA, was behind this looting and arson. Now my dilemma was, how should I take action against him? As a youngster, I said, karte hain. So I moved a file under National Security Act, wherein he could be held behind the bars for 1 year without any questions being asked. So I made out a case. The authority to take a decision on that was the district magistrate. So I sent it to my boss. Now this MLA got the wind of it. He got very annoyed. He went and spoke to somebody in Lucknow, the state headquarters, and I was summoned to Lucknow. So when I walked into a very senior officer's room, he looked at me, "Arey Anil, tumne ye kya kar diya?" So I explained to him, "Saab ye kiya." Bole, "Kiya to tumne theek hai, lekin tum usko वापस ले लो फाइल को." हमने साहब अगर ठीक किया तो वापस क्यों ले? अरे तुम्हारे हित में है, तुम क्यों नेताओं से लड़ते हो? मैंने साहब मैं लड़ तो नहीं रहा हूँ. मैंने एक फाइल भेजी है, डीएम को भेजी है, वो डिसएग्री कर दें, रिजेक्ट कर दें. नहीं, तुम्हारे हित में है, फाइल वापस ले लो. तो अब शायद मैं नहीं कहता शब्द को, मैंने वहाँ कहा मैंने कहा साहब वो तो तीर है, निकल गया कमान से, वापस तो आएगा नहीं. The meeting ended. I came to my district and I was transferred out. I was distraught. I didn't know what had hit me because I had not expected that. I thought I had done the right thing, and the guy also told me I was doing the right thing, yet I was transferred out. Anyway, that's life. I moved on. 7 years down the line, I myself became a district magistrate collector of an adjoining district, Lakhimpur Kheri. Now look at what happens here. My reputation had traveled there. So everyone thought, कोई गड़बड़ करेगा डीएम साहब अंदर कर देंगे, irrespective of political affiliations. These were the days I'm talking of 1990-91, when Ram Janmabhoomi agitation was going on. All other districts surrounding Lakhimpur district were under curfew. In Lakhimpur Kheri, we did not have to impose curfew because of this Iqbal, which was Buland. But as luck would have it, a murder happened. The president of the ruling party, district president of the ruling party, wanted to take out a funeral procession, a sure recipe for disaster. So I tried to convince him. I said, आप ही की सरकार है, आप ही की पार्टी है, आप क्यों ये कर रहे हैं? नहीं नहीं, हम तो निकालेंगे. मैंने उसको बंद कर दिया. And I told my wife, पिछली बार तो ट्रांसफर हुआ था, अब की बार जेल जाएंगे या सस्पेंड होंगे हम. शाम को चीफ मिनिस्टर, late Mr. Mulayam Singh Yadav, rang me up. And whatever I'm telling you is all there in my books, so I have not hidden anything. I'll tell you many more stories. तो शाम को उनका फोन आया, डीएम साहब आपने क्या कर दिया, हमारे अध्यक्ष जी को बंद कर दिया. मैंने कहा साहब हाँ किया तो है. देन आई एक्सप्लेन टू हिम ये किया है. और फिर मैंने ये कहा साहब आप ही की सरकार है, अगर मैं वो निकालेंगे फ्यूनरल प्रोसेशन तो साहब राइट्स होंगे, आपकी बदनामी होगी. नहीं नहीं, कोई तरीका निकालिए उनको छोड़ने का. मैंने कहा साहब ऐसा है, आप उनसे बात कीजिए, उनसे कहिए कि साहब इसकी जरूरत नहीं है फ्यूनरल प्रोसेशन निकालने की. द कन्वर्सेशन एंडेड. सो आई वाज कन्विंस्ड कि सुबह कुछ ना कुछ आ ही जाएगा ऑर्डर. उन दिनों बड़ा बढ़िया चलता था, सस्पेंशन ट्रांसफर बड़ा आराम से होते थे. Morning, I get a call informing me that the district president has agreed not to take out a funeral procession. बहुत बढ़िया, मैंने छोड़ दिया. मेरी कोई पर्सनली दुश्मनी तो थी नहीं. The story doesn't end here. 3 months down the line, the same chief minister who was so annoyed with me awarded me as one of the finest collectors in the state. Then I understood the importance of Karban Nevadikar Este Mafelishu Kadachana. When I was a youngster till about class 7, I didn't win a single medal, single certificate, single award. I used to feel very frustrated. My mother used to tell me, तुम्हारा time आएगा. और तब उसके बाद वो कहती थी, Karban Nevadikar Este Mafelishu. मुझे कुछ नहीं समझ में आता था क्या कह रही हैं. अब जाके समझ में आया, enjoy what you are doing. Enjoy your karma, friends. So that's the first request to all of you, suggestion to all of you. Those are still not hard-boiled eggs. You can try this out. Attempt to enjoy the moments that you are in. Be absolutely in it. People ask me, you don't meditate. I don't really meditate, but I meditate in the form like I'm talking to you. I'm totally here. I'm not nowhere else. I'm with you. That's my meditation. And whatever I do, whether I'm reading a book, whether I'm writing a book, whether I'm singing, whether I'm making music, composing music, I'm in it. That's meditation for me, and that's life. You enjoy it. So that's one. Second is, we feel lack of confidence in ourselves because we fear committing a mistake. There is this fear of failure. I have been through that. And hence we are unable to give the optimum output because we fear. But if you look at it this way, have you come across anybody, at least I have not come across, who hasn't committed a mistake in life? Have you come across anybody who hasn't failed in life? Everyone has failed. Everyone has a committed mistake. So I'm not alone. So what is the big deal? If there is no big deal, why am I nervous? I used to question myself. I remember when I did my class 12, I had taken physics, chemistry, maths as my subjects. And because of sine squared theta plus cos squared theta is equal to 1, I did not have time to develop my communication skills. So when I switched over to humanities, I started improving my communication skills, and I did reasonably well, became a debater for my university. By the way, I'm from Allahabad University. And I used to go all around the country representing the university in debates. So IIT Kanpur used to have a marquee annual cultural program in which debating also was one of them. So I was representing my university there. One day before the debating event was the music event also. तो जैसे होता मैं भी समझता था मैं गाना गा लेता हूँ, अच्छा गा लेता हूँ. हर जना समझता है गाना अच्छा गा लेता है. तो विदाउट एनी प्रैक्टिस मैंने नाम दे दिया. अब आप तो इतने लोग बैठे हों, करीब 1,500 बच्चे बैठे थे. मेरा नाम अनाउंस हुआ, अनिल स्वरूप, सबने ताली बजाई. ताली बजाने में क्या जा रहा है, 2 हाथ ही तो मिलाने हैं, बड़े मुश्किल से हैं, लेकिन मिला दिया, आ गया. मैंने शुरू किया गाना. I picked up the wrong note like the discordant notes of the mosquitoes yesterday. I picked up the wrong note. Within 10 seconds, I was booed out of the auditorium. I don't think anybody has had that experience. I was shattered, totally shattered. Obviously, जब बाहर निकला तो मैंने कहा कि अब कल डिबेट में तो पार्टिसिपेट नहीं करूंगा. So one of my seniors came to me and asked me, बॉस सुना आप कल डिबेट में पार्टिसिपेट नहीं कर रहे हैं. मैंने कहा यार उस ऑडियंस के सामने कौन जाएगा. बोले आप दो गलतियां कर रहे हैं. पहली गलती तो ये कि आप अपने आप को तानसेन समझते थे, आप चले गए गाना गाने बिना रियाज किए हुए. और दूसरा जिसमें आपने किया है प्रैक्टिस, जिसको आता वो आप नहीं करने जा रहे हैं. सो दिस डिस्कशन लास्टेड फॉर अबाउट एन आवर, आफ्टर विच आई हैड ओवरकम माई फियर्स एंड आई सेड आई विल पार्टिसिपेट इन द डिबेट. नेक्स्ट डे I went to the same set of audience. The moment Anil Swarup was announced, they said, Gayak aa gaya. Well, they were taunting me like nobody's business. I had overcome my fears. I went there and spoke and won the first prize in the national debating competition. Friends, I have not looked back after that. Because I'm now convinced that I can commit a mistake. I'm also convinced that I'll not commit the same mistake again. You know, now I travel all over the country, all over the world. Last year in February, I was invited by Harvard to deliver a talk. And I asked them, why me? You know, I've retired 6 years. No, we were looking for somebody who has a balanced view of the country. Not many have the courage to criticize the government or parallelly appreciate the government. I do that very regularly. Very forthrightly, ye sahi hai, galat hai. Come what may. So I said, okay. Then as the word went around, the Berkeley University called me, Northeastern Tufts University. So I go all over the world to talk to people. I couldn't care less. I know I can commit mistake. It has given me a lot of authority, a lot of confidence. The moment you know that you can, the moment you know that you will not commit the same mistake again, you derive enormous amount of confidence. तीसरी चीज, we do a lot of things to impress others. No? अपने लिए नहीं करते, दूसरे को impress करने के लिए. You know, I live in Delhi. Bombay is different. But Delhi is very, very different. I have yet to see anybody driving his own Mercedes car. All the pleasure of driving that lovely car is with the chauffeur, driver. And like the car which I am traveling today, it's a BMW, the back seat is very uncomfortable. For a tall person like you, बैठो नीचे, और निकलते समय you have to struggle to get out of it. तो फिर वो Mercedes 1 करोड़ की खरीदता क्यों है? सोचा आपने कभी? पड़ोसी के लिए? हम लोग कितना काम दूसरों को इंप्रेस करने के लिए करते हैं. You know, there are so many ladies sitting here. Please don't mistake me. I have never understood why do ladies wear 6-inch heel. I'm sure it must be uncomfortable. I have never worn it, but must be uncomfortable. होती तो होगी ना. देखिए कुछ लोग हंस रहे हैं, कुछ नॉट करना चाह रही हैं लेकिन नहीं कर रही हैं, लेकिन पहनते हैं हम. किसके लिए पहनते हैं? दूसरे के लिए. कितना हम पैसा, समय, सब चीज बर्बाद करते हैं दूसरे को इंप्रेस करने के लिए. और ये आप ही के साथ नहीं, मेरे साथ भी था. जब मैं यूनिवर्सिटी में था तो किसी ने मुझसे कह दिया, बॉस तुम्हारी आवाज तो अमिताभ बच्चन जैसी है. और अमिताभ बच्चन की आवाज तो छोड़ दी, मैं अपने आप को अमिताभ बच्चन समझने लगा. मैंने अपने बाल बड़े किए, बेल बॉटम पहना. अब जब उस फोटो को देखते हैं तो देखकर डर लगता है, लेकिन उस समय अपने आप को अमिताभ. हमारे टाइम पे जने कितने लोगों ने सिगरेट पीना शुरू कर दी, क्योंकि उस समय शत्रुघ्न सिन्हा सिगरेट पी के छल्ले निकालते थे. हम क्या कर रहे हैं अपना? इफ यू फोकस ऑन योर सेल्फ instead of unnecessarily being hassled. I am not saying if you can afford it, please do it. You know, I have an industrialist friend. His son is doing very well. He has a Ferrari in India, another one in Brussels. वो संडे की सुबह अपना 5 बजे निकल के जाता है, कोर्स पे चला के आके अपनी खड़ी कर देता है गाड़ी. वो स्वांता सो अपने सुख के लिए कर रहा है, दुनिया को नहीं दिखा रहा है. आजकल तो मैं देखता हूँ जितनी जोरों की आवाज कर रही है मोटरसाइकिल और गाड़ी. अरे भाई, आवाज आप किसको सुना रहे हैं? क्यों आप सबको सुनाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि आप क्या कर रहे हैं, आप कितने बेवकूफ हैं, सॉरी कितने अमीर हैं या जो भी है. लेकिन हम करते हैं. ये किसके लिए कर रहे हैं? दिस इज एड्रेस टू यंगस्टर्स. मैं तो बर्बाद हो गया हूं, लेकिन आप सोच सकते हैं इस बात को. आप करें ना करें, आप जानिए, अगर आप फ्यूचर के लीडर बनना चाहते हो तो आपको सोचना पड़ेगा. आपको ये नहीं देखना पड़ेगा कि आप अगर गंगा स्नान करने जा रहे हैं संगम पे तो क्या जरूरी है उसको फोटो खींचकर आप सोशल मीडिया में डालें. ये अपना पर्सनल मैटर, आप डुबकी लीजिए, भगवान से कनेक्ट कीजिए. दुनिया क्यों बता रहे हैं कि आपका कनेक्शन बन गया है वहां पर? लेकिन हमारी आदत है सोशल मीडिया ने और बर्बाद कर दिया दिखाने के लिए. Everyone wants to show off. For what? You put yourself to enormous inconvenience to show off. एक आध चीज और कहूंगा, उसके बाद I'd like to interact with all of you. I love that. Another thing that we do is we waste a lot of time on issues over which we have absolutely no control. कुछ पता नहीं यार, धोनी ने शॉट नहीं खेला होता तो इंडिया जीत जाती। मैंने लोगों को लड़ते हुए देखा है। अभी जैसे चुनाव हुए इलेक्शन में, देखिए घमासान चल रहा है लोगों में। अरे भाई, जिसको जीतना है वो जीतेगा, अपना वोट डालिए आप। अपने दोस्त को दुश्मन क्यों बना रहे हैं? मैंने कितने लोग दोस्तों को दुश्मन बनते हुए देखा। लेना एक ना दोनों तो भिड़ गया, कुछ नहीं कर सकते। अगेन आई ऑल्सो हैड दिस सिमिलर प्रॉब्लम। आई यूज्ड टू गेट, व्हेनेवर आई यूज्ड टू गेट स्टक इन ट्रैफिक जैम, अब तो बाल नहीं है मेरे, जब थे तो बाल नोचता था मैं, क्या है कहाँ फंस गए। तो एक दिन माई वाइफ वॉज ट्रैवलिंग विद मी, फिर फंस गया किसी ट्रैफिक में। फिर मैंने चीखना शुरू किया, क्या है इतना ट्रैफिक। तो माई वाइफ वेरी कूलली आस्क्ड मी, तुम इनका कुछ कर सकते हो? मैंने कहा मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ? अरे भाई, जब कुछ कर नहीं सकते तो अपना खून क्यों खिला रहे हो? सोचिएगा इस बात को। बिफोर आई जॉइंड द IAS, आई वाज इन द पुलिस सर्विस, undergoing training at the National Police Academy. So one day a friend of mine, a batchmate of mine, he walked up to me and said, बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही। मैंने क्या हो गया? बोले बॉस पेट्रोलियम के दाम बहुत बढ़ रहे हैं। मैंने कहा यार दाम तो बढ़ रहे हैं, क्या तुम्हारे रात को ना सोने से कम हो जाएंगे? नहीं बॉस, देश की आर्थिक स्थिति पर कुप्रभाव पड़ रहा है। अब यहाँ कई लोग इकोनॉमिस्ट बैठे होंगे, प्लीज डोंट टेक मी अदरवाइज। आई मीन कई इकोनॉमिस्ट मिस्टर परेशान होते हैं, सिर्फ परेशान रहते, करते वरते कुछ नहीं है, परेशान है। हम में से कितने लोग सिर्फ परेशान हैं? मैंने कहा यार तुम बात बिल्कुल सही कह रहे हो, चिंता का विषय है, चिंतन का विषय है, चर्चा का विषय है, लेकिन रात की नींद तो उसी चीज के लिए हराम करो जो कुछ कर सकते हो। यू मस्ट हैव स्लीपलेस नाइट्स ऑन योर पैशन, बट नॉट इन एनिटीज लाइक दिस वेर यू कांट डू अ नट। सो उसको समझ में आ गया, चला गया, हाँ सही कह रहे हो यार, मेरे रात को ना सोने से तो कुछ नहीं होगा, चला गया। 3 महीने बाद फिर आए मेरे पास, कहता बॉस रात को नींद नहीं आ रही। मैंने कहा अब क्या हो गया यार, अब तो पेट्रोलिंग के दाम अपने आप कम हो गए बिना तुम्हारे इंटरवेंशन के। नहीं बॉस, देश की पॉपुलेशन बहुत बढ़ रही है। मैंने उससे कहा यार रात को सो जाओ, अपने आप ठीक हो जाएगी। The point that I'm trying to make here is that we spend so much time over stupidities over which we have absolutely no influence. How can you become a leader of the future if you are wasting your time? My personal experience tells me that if you focus on what you can and not so bothered about what you can't, you will have sufficient time to perform in that can, and that can will grow. हमारी सिविल सर्विस में भी कई रेवोल्यूशनरीज आते हैं। मैं उनको अक्सर कहता हूं यार ये रेवोल्यूशनरी नहीं है जगह, अगर तुम्हें रेवोल्यूशनरी बनना है तो झाड़ी उठा के पॉलिटिकल पार्टी ज्वाइन कर लो, यहां काम करो। Because if you do that, you will not have time. If you focus on issues over which you can't. You know, there is an American monk by the name of Reinhold Niebuhr. He makes a very seminal statement. Lord, grant me the serenity to accept things I cannot change, courage to change things that I can, and the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. This is critical. Otherwise, आप पागल हो जाएंगे सोच के ही, मिस्टर परेशान बन के। जो आप कर सकते हैं कीजिए। You know, I never ever went to any politician for any personal favor, and I'm glad that I didn't. Now, I got the best of assignments. There was a crisis, they wanted Anil Swarup. There was an investment crisis in the UPA 2 government. They wanted me in the cabinet secretary as the additional secretary to head a project monitoring group in which each project to be cleared was 1,000 crore plus. And I was there for 15 months. In those 15 months, we got clearance of 5 lakh crores worth of project. And then the new government came. There was a crisis in coal. Mr. Modi picks me up as coal secretary. Even if he had not picked me up. You know, when I retired, people said, you were so close to Mr. Modi, you should have met him and he would have given you some good assignment. I said, who wanted it? I didn't want any assignment. I wanted to earn money after retirement for the simple reason कि सर्विस में तो मैंने कमाया नहीं, मेरे फादर के पास पैसा था नहीं, मुझे मिला नहीं, मेरे ससुर के पास मुझे पता नहीं था या नहीं था, मुझे मिला नहीं, तो मुझे इसके बाद तो बनाना ही था कुछ पैसा। अब मैं आराम से पैसा बना रहा हूँ। नारसी मुंजी तो मुझे कल एक ऐसे होटल में ठहराया जहाँ मैं शायद नहीं ठहरता, पैसे वैसे तो देने का प्रश्न ही नहीं उठता, लेकिन अदरवाइज काफ़ी पैसा मिल जाता है, बोलने का बहुत पैसा मिल जाता है। सो यू हैव टू इवॉल्व ए पर्सन वेर यू आर इन डिमांड, दैट्स इट। मैं अक्सर अपने साथियों को कहता हूँ, योर ट्रू वर्थ विल बी डिटर्मिन्ड आफ्टर यू रिटायर, नॉट एट दिस पॉइंट इन टाइम। सो इट्स इंपॉर्टेंट टू इवॉल्व दैट। नाउ हैविंग लिसन्ड टू मी, you must be wondering, this guy must always be upbeat. No. Like any human being, I have my ups and downs in life, in society, in service. I remember I was posted as Secretary Horticulture in Government of UP in 2003, after my completing my tenure in Delhi. And corruption was at its peak. My minister was called 25% because he took that in advance. I had to serve under him. So one day he sends me an order asking me to suspend a deputy director. Now he was authorized, it was not an illegal order, but he had not given any reason. So I rang him up, मैंने कहा साहब आपने इसको सस्पेंड करने को क्या किया इसने? तो look at his answer, he tells me मुझसे मिलने नहीं आया वो, मैंने कहा बड़ी छोटी चीज़ सर, मैं कह देता हूँ मिल लेगा. Conversation ended. Then I found out about that officer. Everyone said that he's very honest, very efficient. So मेरा माथा और ठनका. मैं actually, I had always believed in protecting my team. No one could touch my team. I mean, I can narrate so many incidents. I was totally clueless to begin with कि मैं क्या करूं इसको बचाने के लिए, because his reputation was honest, efficient, and he was a corrupt minister wanting to suspend him. So as it happens, when you're so distraught, the poet in you comes out. The poet in me came out. और आप जब बहुत द्रवित होते हैं तो अपनी दुविधा जो है वो राम की झोली में डाल देते हैं. तो मैंने ये पंक्तियां लिखी. संशय नहीं मन में तेरी सृष्टि में या तुझ में, तू ही तू मेरे मन में समाया, सब कुछ मैंने तुझसे है पाया, फिर भी स्तब्ध हूं, व्याकुल हूं, अशांत हूं, शायद अनजान हूं. क्या यही जीवन है? जो पापी है, दुराचारी है, क्यों जीत रहा निरंतर है? स्पष्ट करो, अभिव्यक्त करो, कुछ तो करो मेरे राम. मैंने अपनी वेदना राम की झोली में डाल दी. But since I was a die-hard optimist, I still am an optimist. The answer came in these lines which are narrated in my book. समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? समय रुका नहीं, हम क्यों ठहर गए? अभी तो हम चले भी नहीं, फिर क्यों थक गए? उठो पथिक मत भ्रमित हो, धूमिल अंधियारे में श्रेष्ठ वही जो घिरा नहीं हो क्षणिक निराशा में. जागो जगाओ, मन मत बहलाओ, एक मसीहा तुम भी बन जाओ. Inspired by these lines, I went into the rules and I found that if I disagreed with the minister, I could route the file through the chief secretary. So I spoke to the chief secretary, a very fine officer. I told him, sir, he's an honest officer. Minister wants to suspend him. He said, file मुझे भेज दो, फिर देखते हैं. So I wrote a long note and the chief secretary sat on the file. You know, red tape is not always very bad. He just sat on the file. So minister asked me, क्या हुआ? मैंने कहा साहब चीफ सेक्रेटरी पास गई है. खैर जो भी हुआ वो जाके चीफ मिनिस्टर से मिल लिए. उनके आपस में क्या मंत्रणा हुई मुझे पता नहीं. मेरा ट्रांसफर हो गया. जब मेरा ट्रांसफर हुआ तो चीफ सेक्रेटरी बड़े अपसेट. मुझे बुलाया, कहते यार तुम तो उसको बचाने के चक्कर में तुम्हारा ट्रांसफर हो गया. मैंने साहब क्यों परेशान होते हैं? फॉर अ सिविल सर्वेंट ट्रांसफर इज लाइक डेथ. इट इज इनएविटेबल. जो होना उसके लिए परेशान क्या होना. वो सर वैसे भी मैं हिंदू फिलॉसफी में विश्वास करता हूँ. मेरा पुनर्जन्म तो होगा, आप मुझे कहीं पोस्ट करेंगे, मैं वहां जाके फिर वही पाप करूंगा. ही स्टार्टेड लाफिंग. But my attitude towards transfer had changed. You remember in another incident, I was very upset. So I was discovering I have no control over objective reality. The only control I had over is myself. How do I respond to a situation is critical. Circumstances get given. But people ask me, in the last chapter of your book, you've written that if you were to be born again, you would like to be an IAS officer all over. You know, I became an IAS officer because my dad wanted me to become an. I made his dream into my dream and then worked hard towards it. But at the end of my career, I thought this was a wonderful service. And the answer to it is an incident, one of the many incidents, which I call my Bharat Ratna moments, which I would like to narrate to you. I was doing this wonderful scheme called Rashtriya Swasthya Bima Yojana, a health insurance scheme for the poorest of the poor, which came to be recognized world over as one of the finest schemes. It is now called Ayushman Bharat. There is an incident, if time permitted, I narrate how RSBY became Ayushman Bharat. I had some contribution to make. So this came to be recognized. So when Mr. Obama took over as president of the US, one of his advisors rang me up. He said, Mr. Swarup, we've heard a lot about your scheme. Can you come over to the US and make a presentation on your scheme? I said, our scheme is totally different. The context is different. I don't have much to offer. But he insisted. So in one of the visits to the World Bank at Washington, I went over to Brookings Institute that houses these advisors. And I made a presentation on RSBY. During these presentations, there were representatives of the central government, of federal government, state government, our own mission people were there. There were also representatives of Gates Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, many foundations. So after the presentation, I was having a cup of coffee. This gentleman from Gates Foundation walks up to me and asks me a very interesting question. He says, Mr. Swarup, you seem to be very passionate about the scheme. What is the government giving you beyond your salary? So I paused for a moment and asked him a counter question. I asked him, Gates Foundation gives millions of dollars to poor countries. What do you get out of it? He said, well, that's a job, but more than that, we derive a lot of satisfaction out of helping the poorest of the poor. I said, you've answered your own question. This scheme, RSBY, is meant for the poorest of the poor, many of whom would have been dead but for this scheme. So the good wishes of those that survived in their families come back to me somehow, anyhow. That's good enough a kick for me to do what I am doing. And then I narrated an incident to him to illustrate what I meant by kick. In this scheme, I used to travel to small hospitals, which were empaneled. One day I was visiting a hospital, talking to a beneficiary patient. I heard a very feeble voice from behind, Beta idhar aao. I turned around and saw a very old lady. She was so old and frail that she could not sit. She was just lying down. She was flashing that smart card. This was a smart card-based scheme. She said, "Beta, idhar aao." Someone had told her that I had something to do with the scheme. So I went there and I bent down and asked her, "Mata ji, aap kaisi hain?" She tells me, "Beta, मैं बहुत तकलीफ में हूँ, लेकिन इन अस्पताल वालों ने मेरा बड़ा ख्याल रखा है." I said, "फिर तो आप ठीक हो जाएंगे, अपने घर जाएंगी." "नहीं बेटा, मेरा कोई घर वर नहीं है, मैं तो भीख मांगती थी, एक झोपड़ी में रहती थी, मैं बीमार पड़ गई तो मेरा पड़ोसी था, वो भी भीख मांगता था, उसने तुम्हारा ये कार्ड देखा, मुझे अस्पताल में ले आए, यहाँ सब मेरी सेवा कर रहे हैं, मुझसे पैसे भी नहीं मांगते, मेरे पास है भी नहीं देने को." मैंने कहा, "नहीं माता जी, आपको पैसे की जरूरत नहीं है, आप ठीक होकर घर जाएंगी." बोले, "नहीं नहीं बेटा, मैं घर कहाँ जाऊँगी, मेरा कोई परिवार में है ही नहीं, ना भाई है ना बेटा, कोई नहीं है, और वैसे भी मेरी उम्र इतनी हो गई, अब तो मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँगी." I said, "नहीं माता जी, नहीं नहीं बेटा, मैं ऊपर वाले के पास जाऊँगी." This carried on for 10 seconds and then she made a remarkable statement. She tells me, "ऊपर वाले जाके एक बार जरूर कहूँगी, तुम्हारी स्कीम बहुत अच्छी है." Friends, I call them a Bharat Ratnas. So all of you, not so boiled eggs, will have to find your own passion. You have to look inwards and find. Once you do that, you will evolve as a leader to be reckoned with. Thank you very much for inviting me here. God bless all of you. I don't know what is your time frame, but if you have time, I'd like to interact with the audience. If you don't, then I'll go and sit.
Oh, can we?
What's your time frame? Okay, so then I'll call it a day. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Anil Swarup, for such an inspiring talk. Your words, to become a leader, you have to start with yourself, is going to stay rent-free in our heads for the rest of our lives. Thank you.
And who knew mosquitoes could be so inspiring, sir? Anyway, they say leadership is about impact, not titles. And our next speaker defines that perfectly. A visionary leader and a proud alumna from the batch of 1977. Please welcome Ms. Vinita Bali to the stage. We request Mr. Srinivas Iyengar to come to the stage for her heartfelt felicitation.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot. This is great. You usually get something after you've delivered what you had to say, but this comes in advance. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot. I was just thinking it was 50 years ago that I actually joined the Jamnalal Bajaj Institute of Management. So I was the batch that entered in 75 and graduated in 77, you know, which is a significant and a very long journey. And as I look back, I can't help but say that in many ways, the experience that we had at the Institute, the fact that we were in the heart of this very commercial city called Bombay, the fact that in addition to full-time faculty, we had, you know, we call them professors of practice now, but we had practitioners coming to teach us. The fact that we came into the institute at something like 9 in the morning and we were there till 8:30 in the evening, I think all of that considerably shaped several of us, I know certainly from my batch and batches before me and after me. You know, there is Sanjeev who's here and who's going to be in the panel in the afternoon, who was our guide for marketing projects and so on and so forth. So it was a very different energy that we had at the Institute. And I think it was that energy that caused so many of us to go out and do things which were different in many, many ways. You know, my story is that I actually wanted to sit for the Foreign Services exam. And, you know, I had cleared to go to Delhi School of Economics. I went to JNU for a week. I went to D School for a week. And then I had a cousin who lived in Bombay and who was visiting Delhi. And he said, well, you know, you've got to do your master's anyway. Why don't you come and live in Bombay? It'll be a different kind of an experience. And then after that, you can do your, entrance exam. So I literally came here with the intention of doing a master's to write my foreign services exam. But as they say, you have plans and then those plans change. And I think a leadership lesson that I would like to pause and invite everybody to reflect on is, how critical are adaptive skills in the context of leadership skills. I'm saying this because I learned later on, I was one of very few people actually at that time. It's not, it's not a big deal now, but I can tell you in the mid-80s, if you got a chance to go and work overseas and you were not an R&D person, and especially if you were a marketing person, it was a big deal. And I got that opportunity actually to go and work with Cadbury's. I initially went there in 1984 as a group brand manager to work with Cadbury Schweppes in the UK, and then that led to Nigeria, and then that led to South Africa, and I was actually one of the first professional managers from India to work in South Africa. This was 93, 94. And I want to give you a sense of, what we are talking about when we talk about leadership, understanding context. A lot of times people talk about the fact that, there's high employee attrition because companies are not able to retain employees. And I just want to illustrate the small story that happened with me and Cadbury's. So I was in Nigeria and I was under this program where I was going to come back and become CEO of Cadbury in India because, that was the end of a program we were doing with INSEAD and so on. Till Cadbury came to me in Nigeria and said, well, there's this opportunity in South Africa to go as the Director of Marketing and Sales. And I said to them, how do I fit? I'm neither black nor white. And they say, well, that's exactly why you fit. And, why don't you go for 10 days, visit South Africa, travel around, of course, meet the people in Cadbury's, and then decide what you want to do. So off I went from Lagos to Johannesburg. I traveled around, I met people in Cadbury's, I saw the country, and I just fell in love with South Africa. So I chose to actually go to South Africa as Sales and Marketing Director on the board of Cadbury South Africa, and not as CEO, which is what I would have been if I had come back to India. Now, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because one of the essential insights I've had living and working in 6 countries on 5 continents is that it's not about a position, it's not about a title, it's not about a leader, it is about leadership. And there's a big difference. A leader could be a title. Just because I'm called president doesn't make me a leader. Just because I'm called a management trainee also doesn't mean that I am not a leader. Because what we are looking for is leadership, not a title or an entitlement or anything like this. And in this context, in fact, because I lived in so many places, which were also places that had a very different history, that had a very different context. This was South Africa. I lived in Chile when I worked with the Coca-Cola company. So I lived and worked apart from India in the UK, in Nigeria, in South Africa, in Atlanta with the Coca-Cola company, then in Chile, back to Atlanta, and then back to India with Britannia. And one of the things that is very consistent and clear across each culture and each geography is that what people really care about, what people respect, is not what you say, but what you do. And that is what leadership is. So when we are talking about, getting leaders ready for the future, my invitation to you is that you're already a leader. If you're not a leader today, you're not going to become a leader in the future. I know this is a very broad statement I'm making, but the crux of the statement really is that don't think about leader as someone who is managing a team or, you know, managing an outcome or managing other people and so on. Leadership is what matters. And what is the difference between leaders and leadership? Leader is a title. Leadership is behavior. It is about what I do, not what I say. As somebody said, your words speak so loudly, your actions speak so loudly, I can't hear your words. That, I think, is what leadership is. And certainly for someone like me, if you think about one of the greatest leaders that the world has had, and this was somebody who had no title, he had no job responsibility, nobody was reporting to him, he never got an award from Economic Times or Business Today or even the Nobel Committee. Of course, his name was Gandhi. And I was fortunate enough to live in South Africa, which is where he spent a lot of time, as well as in Atlanta, which was influenced greatly by the thinking of Martin Luther King, for whom Gandhi was such an icon. And I can tell you, driving in the remotest of remote places in Chile, you suddenly come across a statue and you say, oh my God, it is Gandhi. Now think about it. Here is somebody who, so many years after he's gone, is still considered to be one of the inspirational leaders that the world has had. And I think Einstein's description of him, which is, generations to come will scarcely believe that a man such as him in flesh and blood walked this earth. I think that's the quintessential quality I would like us to think about. What is leadership? It means taking ownership for results. It means holding yourself responsible and accountable. It means changing things for the better. It means creating a transformation wherever you are. Now, that is true in the domain of the corporate world. It is true in the domain of the development world. It is true in the domain of academics. It is true in virtually every domain. And you can see distinctive leadership characteristics in people, when they join you as management trainees. I believe that a management trainee has to have as much leadership in fulfilling that role as a managing director has in fulfilling, a much bigger role. And that is what we learn as we grow into what we are doing, as we enjoy what we are doing. The previous speaker talked about enjoyment. I really believe that, again, as someone said, take something that you like doing and you'll never have to work a single day in your life. I think what we are also missing as a big ingredient in leadership, I'll talk about 2 or 3 characteristics. These are not all-encompassing. These are things that I have found to be relevant, absolutely critical, and germane to your success as an individual. Success not defined as appearing on the front page of a newspaper or on a magazine, but success defined as true regard and respect for what you have done and what you have delivered. It doesn't matter what the scale is. Even if you can make the lives of 300 people better, it's 300 more than it was before you did that. So I think the fundamental characteristic of leadership is one of authenticity. Something that we don't see a lot of, and something that I would like all of the students who are here to really think about. How authentic are you? How much of what you're doing comes out of conviction, and how much of it comes out of, I have to do it because everybody is doing it. I can tell you, if you're operating not from conviction, but from something else, sooner or later, it begins to show it begins to tell. I think the second thing really is, as a leader or a quality of leadership, is that leaders never settle for mediocrity. They always push excellence. You can see that sports is a great analogy. You know, if I have to be better than Federer, I have to play a better game than Federer. And those of you who actually listened to Federer's commencement speech, I think at Dartmouth University, he gave a fabulous statistic. He said, out of all the games he's played, he's won 82% of the games, but he's won only 54% of the points. And I think that is so important. That is so important. Athletes wake up every morning knowing that if they are not fit, if they are not competitive, if they cannot score more points, they will never win. It should not be any different in the academic world or in the world of business. So I think leaders push for solutions that are not the obvious ones. Leaders push for excellence when everybody is settling for mediocrity. And leaders operate with a sense of genuineness and authenticity. The last thing I want to say about leaders and leadership is that a lot of it really has to do with what I call character. In tough times, what is the basis of making decisions? And all of us will face tough times. I can give you an example where in several of my roles, we needed to set up greenfield units, we needed to set up factories. In some cases, that was a breeze. In other cases, you know, we were asked to return favors or do favors, and we chose to walk away rather than do that because it was critical and important to demonstrate that the values that we talk about are the values that we live by. I know it's tough, I know it's hard, I know many things are happening today. AI can do stuff that, you know, takes all of us a long time to do. But I think at the end of the day, the most important thing is, and again, I quote from a book that I read when I was in school, but a book that made a huge and significant impact on me. It's called To Kill a Mockingbird, where in one of the sentences he says, before you learn to live with others, you've got to learn to live with yourself. And I think that's essentially what we are doing. If you're a happy person, you will create joy wherever you go. If you're an unhappy person, the chances are that you won't. So I think it's very important in whatever we choose to do, that we like what we do, we enjoy what we do, because only then will we give it our best. And I would say it doesn't matter what your title is or what your salary is. To be happy, you neither need the title nor do you need the salary. I know this sounds rather counterintuitive. Of course, we do need, you know, a minimum standard of living and so on and so forth. I'm not talking about that. But I'm really saying that in order to move from that angle of mediocrity to excellence, you have to think beyond the obvious. Let me give you an example. You know, there is this wonderful brand of a wonderful company called Patagonia. And basically, their whole premise is that they live to take care of the environment. Now, can you imagine a business in the context of sustainability? They have now taken a stance which says, if you walk into a store and you want to buy a new jacket, they ask you if you have an old one, and they ask you if they can repair it for you so that they save the resources of the environment to give you a jacket, which, you know, otherwise you would have thrown, which would have gone into some landfill somewhere and become a problem for the world. The last point I really want to end up with is the primary responsibility of leadership, I believe, is to understand context. And with that understanding of the context, make decisions that are right decisions in that context. A lot of time, we make decisions which may be harmful for the environment, harmful for our planet. I live in Bangalore, and just 10 days ago, all of us went and protested. The protest didn't lead to the result we wanted to achieve, but at least we registered our protest. There is a building, a government building being constructed, which meant cutting out 30 beautiful trees in the heart, in the city of Bangalore. And I think the question really is that when we understand context, we understand that business is a function not just of stakeholders, starting with shareholders and consumers and customers. I mean, those are the obvious, or your supply chain. But it is also a relationship which we create with the environment, with this planet. And if you think about it, a lot of the issues that all of us, and especially the younger generation sitting here, will have to deal with is how can we become environmentally responsible? That, I believe, is a critical question that leadership has to answer. A critical question that leadership has to answer also is, how do we create a world that is not just economically viable, but also socially inclusive? We have a long way to go. And the future of leadership is not about, using AI and so on. Of course, I'm taking that as a given. When I was doing my MBA at Bajaj, we had to learn COBOL and Fortran. Did we do anything with it? The answer is no. We all learned how to use computers, then we learned how to use Google, now we are learning how to do ChatGPT, etc., etc. Is that going to make you a good leader? My answer is no. What is, on the other hand, going to make you a good leader is how you think, how responsible you are, the kind of questions you ask, the curiosity you have, how much you challenge yourself, and how much do you say that at the end of the day, all of us are in a big relationship with planet Earth. And unless the decisions we make are right, not just for our business, but also people who are on this planet, including the trees and the birds and the animals and everything else, we are not going to create a future which is necessarily going to be joyful. And that decision is in our hands. That call is in our hands. We make the decisions today that will have implications for the future. And I think that's the responsibility of leadership. That's understanding the context. And that's acting with responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Listening to women in power about authentic leadership and character is always incredible.
Our next speaker is a pioneer in India's financial landscape, former BSE president and the founder of Anand Rathi Group. With 50 years of expertise, he has driven market reforms and wealth management innovation. So, here to unveil the future of finance in 2040, please welcome Mr. Anand Rathi. I request Professor Anil Pandey to come on the stage and felicitate Mr. Rathi as a token of our gratitude.
My fellow distinguished speakers before me and after me, the distinguished alumni of this institute, Madam Kavita, and all the distinguished teachers and professors of the school, and my dear future leaders of this country, our students. I'm so grateful for inviting me to speak to this distinguished audience. And particularly, I want to thank Anita ma'am, who wanted me to come and speak and share my experience, and particularly on the theme of today. I would like to compliment the Institute for fantastic work, producing so many leaders in the last 60 years. I see many of them here. And also more grateful because this institute has given me also the CEO of my wealth management business, Mr. Rakesh Rawal. And therefore, I am very grateful to this institute. We are also recruiting many students every year. And I must say that I think the students coming from this institute are really doing very well in our business. And I'm sure we'll continue to recruit more and more people. Now, the theme which you had mentioned for this session was the Vision 2040 for India, to how do we prepare the leaders for that period, future. I think it's a great subject which you've taken, because the challenges of the leadership is changing. In my own experience, I think from the time I started my career, we didn't have an electronic calculator. I used the first calculator of India 60 years back. I worked on the first computer of India, IBM 1401. And I think students won't believe, it was an 8K machine. From there, I think obviously the challenges are going up, and therefore it's very important to think, how do we prepare the leaders for future for 2040? Now, to understand, it's very important for us to what's going to happen in India in next 15 years, 2040. We are progressing very well. We are one of the fastest growing economy in the world. And therefore, I think, as the economy grows, the challenges will grow, opportunities will grow. And in 2040, where today we are about 4.5 trillion economy, I'm sure we'll reach at least 13, 14 trillion economy. Almost 3 times the size of what we have today. The technology is advancing very fast. AI, machine language, on every front, technology is really going up day by day, and therefore the challenges to learn are even greater. Since I come from the stock market, I'll look in terms of market capitalization. Today, our country has market capitalization of $5 trillion. I'm sure by 2040, we'll reach at least $15 trillion, if not more. So a lot of things are going to happen next 15 years. We will become a very important country. We'll be the 3rd largest economy of the world and growing. And hopefully, in terms of population, we are already the largest. And by that time, we'll have almost 160 crores of population in India. The good part is that we'll have young population. I think today also our average age is about 28, 29. And even in the next 15 years, we are going to see the similar, about 2/3 or more than 2/3 of people are in 19, 18 years to 60 years, but now 60 years is not a working age. I think you have to count up to 70 years. So we'll have almost 75% of our population which is capable of working. So when we're talking of leadership, friends, what is the meaning of leadership? To my mind, all my experience which I have learned, leadership is not being in charge of what you do or what you achieve for yourself. It's more about taking care of those who are working with you, whose charge you have got. So true leader has to create leaders. Not only he has to work for himself, but he has to create leaders. And therefore, the leaders have to see beyond present. As Vinita rightly pointed, you know, leadership starts from beginning. One has to learn the leadership from day one. You come into any position. So true leaders do not have to just live in present alone. Obviously, they have to look for future. As the challenges keep on changing, I think that's very important. In my own experience in last so many years, my first focus has always been to train people, to groom people. You know, I worked for almost 3 decades in industry, and before I started my business, I was CEO of Indian Rayon. So I worked with Bajaj for many years before starting my own. And what I learned was that if you have to succeed, I think it's the first responsibility of the leader to groom people, to create and build people. Because if organization has to grow, the people have to grow. And therefore, what the leaders have to learn? You have to empower, learn how to empower people to do their best. The leader's job is to get best out of people. You know, people have a lot of capabilities, and we all know that these capabilities are not fully used unless until the leaders are such who are able to get best out of them. In India, we have grown. I've seen the changes. We have become very good in anything which you're doing compared to what we were doing 20 years, 30 years, 40 years ago. But still, a lot of challenges exist. If we want to become world leaders, we have to become more competitive than what we are in everything. Whether it is cost of production, whether it is productivity, everything we have to become very, very productive. And we have to improve our competitiveness. I think one of the areas we have not been able to do very well on our export front. You know, while our local efficiencies have improved, number of industries which I have run in my career, or number of industries I have really turned around as a consultant, I think there is a great scope to improve our competitiveness. And that's what I think in long term, if you have to, you know, 2040, if you have to become a world leader, if our GDP has to grow at 10%, 8 to 10% or more, I think competitiveness is one thing which the future leaders have to look at it. So friends, if you look at challenge, what are the challenges which we are looking at besides competitiveness? I think one of the major challenge is the disruptions which are coming, the technological disruptions or the market disruptions. I think the speed at which the changes are taking place are very significant. You know, I think what is happening in last 10 years, in next 10 years, the pace of change may be at least 3-4 times. And therefore, it's very important for future leaders to equip themselves with the changing technology, with the changing requirement of the businesses. And one more important thing which is, I think I would like to, because a lot of students sitting here, while technology has improved, the knowledge has improved, the source of knowledge have improved, I always found that the young boys and girls who come, they are far more intelligent, very good knowledge. But one area which I think leaders have to look at is the focus, the concentration. I think one of the disadvantages of, we have seen the changing technology, is the lack of focus which is happening. In fact, many times, you know, I see it when I send a message to some of my colleagues, and if I get an answer immediately on WhatsApp, I get worried. Because the focus is changing now. You know, people are really doing on sort of urgent basis. You know, we have seen walking on the road, people will just keep on seeing messages. So I think focus is one important area which has to be there. The future challenges also for the leaders is the aspirations are growing. You know, we have seen that when I started my career, our aspirations were not great at all. We didn't want to grow very fast. It's not that, you know, we want to become CEO in the next 10 years, 15 years. But today, the situations are different. So one of the challenges would be to meet the aspirations of the young managers who are coming into business. And also, the socio-economic situation is changing. Obviously, a lot of talk about, difference between the rich and poor, difference between rural and urban. I think the challenges have to be met by future leaders. So what do you need, friends, if you have to become a good leader in 2040? Obviously, one thing which you always needed is a good vision. I think any leader who has done well, who has grown to the highest positions in their career or in their businesses had excellent vision. And what it means, you should be able to anticipate the future better than anybody else is to do, and which can come only by experience as such. You have to be very tech savvy, I think, because the way technology is changing, everybody, whether you are in manufacturing, you are in services, anywhere, everywhere the technology demand is greater, and everybody has to see that. The third thing, which is obviously, already today important, but is going to be more important, is a global perspective. I think the world is changing very fast, and in a changing world, particularly if you are talking of acquiring leadership, obviously you have to think at what is the world going to go, what is the global economy going to go, what is going to be our role, what is going to be India's role, particularly what is going to be your business, because there will be a global. In fact, one of the opportunities for leaders of India would be a lot of global opportunity. I think while most of our businesses have grown very well within India, but now more and more leaders are thinking of, I was very fortunate to work with Mr. Aditya Birla directly, who became a global leader very fast. I think he set up the first factory outside India in 1969, when it was not thinkable for many corporates here, other than, I think, Tata's obviously were the first to look for that. So you have to have excellent global perspective. One more important thing which I think is important even today or future is the great values, the ethics. I think these are very, very important. I can tell with my own experience that what has helped me to grow in the last 30 years in this business is the core values we started with. I'm happy to share with you that, when I started, we put 3 core values in our organization. First and foremost, you have to be entrepreneurial. So what we thought that we'll have only business leaders. We'll have not executives, but businessmen and truly we have been able to develop that organization, that culture in our organization. How do you define that you create entrepreneurship? I think one differentiating factor, we don't believe in giving targets to anyone. Everybody fixes their own targets, and that's how, the organization has grown faster. We always believed that given freedom for people to think themselves, where do you want to grow, I think their growth is always faster. And last but not least, I think, is the requirement of the EQ. While we always given good emphasis to IQ, but now EQ is becoming emotional intelligence, and I'm sure all of you are very familiar with that. I don't have to talk about that, but I think EQ, friends, and particularly for the young students, likes to say that it's very important for you to start learning the emotional intelligence part right from day one. So these are various qualities, I think, to my mind, the leaders will need, and therefore, you must work on that. What can we do? Obviously, one of the areas which we need to think is, like this institute, how do you change your curriculums? How do you change your educational practices? How do you train people, the students, to acquire the qualities which they need to be future leaders? So those reforms are very important. The other important thing is that the training and the skill development, which particularly any organization we see, how does a good organization in Britannia or Hindustan Lever, how are they different from others? Because they have a strong training and development people for their people, and they grow people from within. So these, I think, to my knowledge, with my experienced friends, I can tell you that the future is great. I'm very optimistic about our country. In fact, sometimes when I address the young students, I say that I'm envious of you. Why? Because you are born at the right time, at the right place. I think we were born perhaps before time, when the opportunities were not great. Today, the opportunities for you are going to be far, far greater. And therefore, a great career awaits you guys. So I think if you are, wanting to become a great leader, I think you must prepare for it right from now. You need to have a vision. You must have the capability to train and empower people. You must have very high ethics level, which you need to do. So I think, talking of values, I talk about entrepreneurship. Two more things which I would like to add to that. The second was a very ethical practices. We decided that any business we should do, the customer's interest should precede ours. And that is one concept which has always kept us in good state. And third, and which is, a little more difficult to do, is to create a family culture. I think we believe in a strong family culture. Today we have, I started this business 30 years back with 25 people. Today we have 5,000 people in our entire group, and still we work as a family. I make sure that every year I meet each and every employee of the company during our offsites or some other way. These are the values which friends had helped us a lot. I would once again like to thank Jamnalal Bajaj Institute for inviting me and sharing my views on the leadership. I'm sure there's a lot for me to learn from all of you, and therefore I will be very happy, obviously, to communicate with you, interact with you, and thank you so much once again. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. That was very insightful, especially the part about how we don't need to just have high IQ, but also high EQ. So thank you, sir.
Up next, we have someone who has practically defined Indian branding and advertising. He's a proud JBIMS alumnus of batch 1972. So everyone give it up for the founder of Madison World, Mr. Sam Balsara. I invite Professor Dur Khan to please felicitate Mr. Sam Balsara as token of our gratitude.
Hi, what do you teach?
HR.
HR, okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Professor Kavita, for inviting me today on this very momentous occasion. I passed out from what we used to call Bajaj over 50 years ago. So it's wonderful to reminisce a bit about how I got to this very prestigious place, and which was, I believe, then more or less considered as the third or fourth best institute, the other two being IIM Ahmedabad and Calcutta, maybe Xavier's, and then us. So I used to live in Bangalore, and I had entered the third and final year of my BCom class in Bangalore and was all set to become a chartered accountant. Why chartered accountant? Just because my elder brother was one and he had a successful practice in Bombay. Till one fine day, I met a cousin of mine who is in IIM Bangalore and who had just passed out, and the thought of doing a management course sort of greatly appealed to me. Now, why management versus chartered accountancy? I thought to myself that anybody can try and become a chartered accountant. There is no entry barrier to wanting a management degree. Yeah, there is an exit barrier. But for management degree, the challenge is the entrance. And that's how I chose to apply to Bajaj. Of course, I was lucky. I don't know what the selectors saw in me, that out of thousands of applications, I think I was the one selected. Then, imagine my frustration, because after having got admission to this prestigious university, I could not attend the course because my Bangalore University had decided to postpone results of my BCom course. So, every day I was restless in Bangalore, counting when is the result coming, when is the result coming. Finally, it came almost 2 weeks later after the foundation course in Bombay started. So the day it came, I took a flight the same day from the airport, went straight to the Bajaj Institute and started my course. Now, one of the things that I learned somewhere along the way is that education is what remains after you have forgotten what you have learned. So I thought to myself, what did I learn at Bajaj Institute? I think I learned that my job as a manager is to maximize value creation. How I can maximize output with minimum input. Whether the output is defined as market share or profits or sales or whatever, but how do I achieve it with minimal inputs? And this learning, I believe, has stood me more or less in good stead all these years, and even more so when I started my entrepreneurial career 37 years ago. Before that, I worked with two marketing organizations, Sarabhai's and Cadbury, and two advertising agencies, Contract and Mudra. And I believe this single thought has stood me in good stead, even when Madison was a fledgling and now when it is scaled up. Also, I am reminded about one subject that I was taught at Bajaj and that I was most fearful about, and that was operations research. And of all the subjects, this subject had a viva, and the viva was to be administered by one Dr. Patil, quite a strict professor, if I may say so. She later went on to become the director of the institute. I faced Dr. Patil for the viva and said at the outset in a slightly hesitant and fearful voice that, Professor, I just can't get my head around this operations research. I think I'm reasonably good in several other subjects, but this one I can't just handle. But I said, I've learned one thing, that operations research as a subject can be very useful in a lot of marketing areas where one needs to optimize. How to optimize, I may not have mastered, but at least I know there is something like operations research, the subject, and hopefully there will be others available to me who are experts. Believe it or not, I passed the Viva with the qualifying 50% marks in those days. I wonder if such a strategy would work in today's time. I don't even know if you have a Viva as part of your exam. As a student, I used to come to Bombay quite frequently, where my mother and her sisters had a house in distant Jogeshwari. On one of the trips, my elder brother arranged a meeting for me with the then managing director of Tata Textiles, one Mr. Dower, to knock some sense into me. One of the things he said is, always take a job which earns you less than what you think you're worth, or earns you less than what you can directly contribute to your company. Because if you do that, then you can be ready at any time for an easy switch. If you're overpaid, you got a problem, because then you're stuck with that company. Using that principle, which I had kept in mind, the professor who taught me marketing, it was Pran Chowdhury, the then marketing director of Horlicks, who had then moved on to join Sarabai's, which was starting an exclusive marketing company called HPMA. I joined him because he offered me a job. He said, I can't pay too much, I'll pay you 800 rupees. To say that I echo the views of Mr. Rathi, and I do believe that you can't be in a better place than in India today with a management degree to empower you. The time that we faced were far more difficult. The opportunities were much less. Today, maybe the challenges are more, but the opportunities are also there. And to echo the first speaker's views, I think what you need is just confidence that you can do it. And you're equipped with a very strong degree, which is recognized even today, 60 years later. So you have nothing to fear about. Go out into the world with confidence and conquer it. I run now a media agency, and I thought I would share with you some elements of what is happening in the media world. One of the important things, besides Trump's tariffs, which should give us sleepless nights, or maybe opportunities too, is in recent times we have seen consumption slowing down very sharply. One of the bellwethers of this is the growth of FMCG companies. If you see many FMCG companies, growth is under pressure. Hindustan Lever or Unilever, the bellwether in the stock market, has grown for the last 5 years at about 2%. 2% is the growth. An air conditioning company like Blue Star, and I serve on its board, is growing at 25%. So some sectors are growing rather well, some sectors are struggling. And we can see the reasons why. One of the hypotheses we have is, unfortunately, the rich are getting richer and the poor, I wouldn't say are getting poorer, but they are where they are. So FMCG stocks are dependent more on masses. On the other hand, you see there is a strong movement for premiumization. So, hotels, restaurants, air conditioners, conspicuous consumption is on a phenomenal rise. So, I think currently the trend is to launch more premium products. Premium is a relative term, premium to your category, but you're likely to face less headwinds there than if you did with regular products. The other thing that I wanted to speak about, for example, just to illustrate my point, Nestle is growing faster than Unilever. Zara is growing faster than V-Mart. Royal Enfield motorbikes are growing faster than Hero. And BMW, which someone spoke about, is growing at 5% compared to Mahindra at 1%. So just to illustrate varying growth rates. So the other important thing we have to recognize is, everybody talks about India being a great force. Now, what is India all about? India is all about rural. And fortunately for us, for most markets, rural contributes to 60% of the market. And rural has already started firing. Unfortunately, urban, which has been strong all these years, is now slowing down. So you cannot ignore rural markets. You have to look at them, but we tend to talk of rural as one big mass. Rural consists of 6 lakh villages. So you have to be a little selective, because only about 30% of the rural districts actually have purchasing power. So if you're in marketing, you have to rightly identify what those 30% districts are and attack them. I think the other thing that I could talk about is that all cycles are getting shorter, right from the CEO's term to the marketing manager's term to the junior media planner's term are getting shorter and shorter, because unlike in my time, when one used to stay in an organization for a sufficient length of time, these days people seem to be in a desperate hurry to reach the top. And they feel that, the faster your salary rises, the closer you're getting to the top. I would refer all of you to my friend Mauli, who spread across both HR and marketing at different points in time. He's written a wonderful book where he talks about, he says that he has analyzed many marketing people's journey, and he says a normal working life is about 40-45 years. If you spend the first 20-25 years not worrying about your salary or position, but learning on the job, and staying in the same job for a sufficient length of time so that you can see the entire cycle. He was talking about brands, so he was saying, see one full cycle through, from development stage to launch stage to maturity stage. Then you can say that you have the genuine expertise and experience. He said it's completely wrong to go generally by years of experience. Years of experience doesn't mean anything, because you may just go from one job to another job to another job to another job, and it doesn't add anything to your learning. But if you are in one company, at least for that entire cycle, then you have acquired some knowledge, you have acquired some learning. So I would urge all of you to please read that book as you start your careers. Now, coming back to media, when I started Madison, there was a concept of an agency. And there was one agency that did everything, Of course, the basic and core product was advertising, and then, the media boys came in right at the end, and they were given, Vinita would give us only 5 minutes at the end of the presentation to discuss media, and it was done and dusted. Till one fine day when we were serving P&G, and Vinita's brother was leading it, he called a media AOR pitch. And surprise of surprise, my agency, that had relatively the least qualification to claim to be the media AOR of P&G, won that pitch. So that's how our media career started. To give you a little feel about what media is, the world spends about over $1 trillion on advertising. So it must be working. Otherwise, everybody is not stupid to spend $1 trillion on advertising. And US is the single largest market, contributing to 30% of this spend. And surprise of surprise, last year, not only was it the largest, it also grew the fastest. Possibly thanks to Trump's friend, who gave a big boost to the election campaigns, which helped him win. Coming to India, in India also the media market has grown rather well. We are now at about 1,20,000 crores. And of course, right under my nose there have been seismic changes. You know, there was a time earlier when most marketers use print and cinema. Then emerged television with, you know, Doordarshan holding sway for several decades. Then was the age of satellite channels. Till a new kid emerged on the block, which is digital. So globally today, digital is 75% of over $1 trillion, 75%. And 75% of that goes to Google, Facebook, and Amazon. So it's very centralized, and they are the real power brokers in the world today. In India too, you know, digital has now started ramping up very rapidly. It made an appearance at 4%, but today it is at 44%. So it is already the single largest medium, and I can see that in the near future, it may not touch 75, but I think at least 60% it would touch. And the sort of new kid on the block within digital is CTV, you know, or connected TV as we call it. That's like viewing content on your TV screen, but digitally. So it's categorized under digital, but if you ask my wife, she'll say she's watching television. So there is that shift taking place, and that has become extremely popular now and is expected to grow very rapidly. All this is happening at the cost of traditional TV, which is, you know, print, linear TV, cinema, radio, outdoor. They're all relatively shrinking in the face of competition from digital. So that's all I had to say. Thank you very much for listening to me and for inviting me today.
Thank you so much, Mr. Sam, for your inspiring words. And I assure you that when we JBIMS students go out in the world, we'll go out with confidence and conquer.
Naman, I think we've had enough of brain food, and I think it's fair that all of us now nourish our bodies as well.
Surely. So, ladies and gentlemen, the lunch is now served. So please move on to the dining area and continue your conversations over a warm meal. Thank you so much.